we're here, right? And we are good, right? So basically, we're going to try and get this, find the area's bird e-location code, right? This little
Yep.
bit in here, right? And that's what we're going to look to do next. So let's take a look back at app.js. We've got that on our right-hand side here, right? So there we go. I'd have to say VS Code is every improvement that I'm making is just making it that tiny bit better, and I do enjoy it. So we have them in this details here, right? This is our form, and then we have this regions, right? And this is a wee app, right? And
Yep.
we're just going to go into the regions here, right? And double click that so it stays open, right? Now we've got our use context, which is basically React's way of grabbing onto DOM elements as they change on their VDOM algorithms, right? And so that way it could it knows where that particular element is as the old one gets discarded. And we've got a lot of states getting added, right?
Yes, we do.
But this makes sense. I mean, in all fairness, you do need to get the location, the sublocation, its regions, and then subregions, because we did go through the process a wee bit. There was a number of clicking, so every click we're just setting a new state, I presume.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then we've got functions, and then for each function it looks like we are making a fetch request,
Yes.
right? Excellent. So this kind of feels very similar to what we did in the previous one, where we set the fetch birds right here, right?
Hmm.
So this feels like we could actually encapsulate this in its own little application, or within its own little set of series of XElements, right? And just bring a different style of authoring to XElement, to what we've already seen, and to creating Astro components in general. I was thinking just taking this a wee step further and just showing a good how to author Astro components, if you get what I mean.
Hmm.
We could try and merge that into this process a wee bit, because this is a new application, so we could try something completely novel with this. Right, so what we've got subdivide location, we get the region, right? We get the regional lists, and then this just populates the list. So when it clicks here, right, and then we set the sublocation code, pass in the code, region code, region code, and that comes from the props. Got you. Right, and this region gets set through here. Just working my way up, set region, and then regions here. Got you. Right, sorry, this is just me looking through, just getting an idea of the code. And
Yep.
then this is our what we're returning, right? And it just basically creates a list for every region and sub-region there comes after, right?
Right. So
Um,
just to give you a little bit of extra
mhm,
context, so the eBird API call needs a properly formatted location code,
mhm,
but where the extra added bit of complexity comes in is, I'm going to take Canada, for example. So
mhm.
CA is a valid code. If you put that code in for whatever you want to search for, then you will get all of Canada. So CA is a valid code. CA -ON is a valid code. That's if you want to break it down, if you want to fetch birds at the Canada Ontario level, that's fine too. CAONTO is a valid location code. And that, so the thing is that you can search a region at various levels. Now, it would be nice if they were all, 2-letter character spans, but they're not, because we've seen with Iceland that Reykjavik's code is IS-1. So they don't always follow the same format, but part of the reason that this function is a bit as complicated as it is for finding
And
your own location code is you
it's
might want
for
to
the
search
API.
all of Scotland. So you might just
Yes.
put GB in, and then you might choose Scotland, and you might be like, okay, I'm good. That's the code I want to search. Or you might want to further subdivide your searches. So yeah, if you go into sBird for a second, the one where this is actually working right now, and you, in the top, in choosing your location, so you're going to put in GB, and you're going to submit that code. Now, you can just choose GB. You could choose to find all the birds at code GB. That's a valid code. Or you can choose, yeah, that's fine. I know it's refreshing. Or you can choose any of these subdivisions as particular levels. So even down here, yeah, so if you put in GB, so click to set your region. So if you click Scotland, right now, your default region is set to that, and that's perfectly valid. You could search at that level. You could search countrywide for these listings. You don't have to choose a sub-region, but you can. So that's, I'm just letting you know what are valid properties. So you could narrow down all the way to Glasgow or to Edinburgh, but you don't have to. They will all of these things here, whatever level you decide to stop at, will give you a valid eBird location code for an API call.
That's okay. I think there's an interesting way that we can build this up, right? Like you've done it, region, sub-region, city, right?
Right, so notice if you scroll up a little bit to the second box, like the box previously, not within the box you're in, if you click on a different one, yeah, notice how your default region is now currently set to GB NIR. And it only updated to DRY once you clicked Dairy. So that you could be using.
That's going to make my pal really happy.
Yeah, but if you choose Wales, for example, if you just hit the Wales button and don't hit anything else, you can see your default region is currently to search everything in Wales.
Wales, yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And that's a valid code.
That makes sense, right? So, I like these.
I got fancy.
You did get fancy. To be honest, right, it is something, right, that we're kind of missing out is the styling, right? We do need to go through the styling a wee bit, but I must confess on the record, styling is not my strongest forte, is it, Sarah?
Well, and nor is it mine. So we are a pair in this here. No one should be letting us loose on their sites.
Oh, I must say, right, thank you for Ben for joining for so long. That was a real treat that he was here. But yes, so let's do this. To be honest, I think that's what we're going to do every time we come back into to demonstrate what we're needing. We just use the actual website, right? So we are going back to not XElement, sorry, xBird, and we have la di da di da da this down here. No, this bit here. So we're going to be making the regions, right? So let's get back to this. You could go to the side, you could disappear, right? And we've got our regions, right? So this is a component in itself, right? I'm just thinking out loud, right? And then find country location code, right? Okay, this form is a component, right? This itself is a component. And then we'll make these out into their own individual components. And then the sublist regions, we'll make them out because that's what, aye. And then for everyone, we'll, basically start going in, right? And then we just
and so further complicating the situation is that not every region can be subdivided to the same extent. So you know how when we went through the buttons, we got 3 levels? Like
some only give you 2.
Some of them only have 2. Yeah. Right. So we're going to have more conditionals and stuff like that going on.
Okay. Let's take a good look at this, right? Like always, we're going to look at what static stuff we can take and then add interactivity, the interactivity that we need, basically everything up above, the fetch requests,
Yeah.
the logic, the separation, the states, right? That all gets added second, right? So, yay, more of this. And okay, so cue the music and the fast forwardy bit, right? And what I'm going to do straight away is just get all the static content onto pages, and then once they're on pages, I'll discuss what I've done. Components, xBird. And I'm going to make a folder in here, and we're just going to call this regions. Xregions. Xregion. Just to confuse absolutely everybody. Okay, and Astro on the left, code on the right. Okay, so we have a regions list, and yep, that's our regions divs here, which is this. Ah, I see what you've done. Okay, so this is going to be inside a function. Okay, so I need this. Let me just copy this in here. Clean up some of this. All we're going to do is create a span around this. So this will be a span. And we're going to give this, yeah. And same in here. Store.default location. Right, I'm just basically dropping a placeholder in between these spans, right, to replace what React is doing. So whereas React and their JSX will have this, we don't have the JSX-ness of React on the client, if you get what I mean. There's that reactivity, right, where I could just drop in, curly brackets and put in the variable, and then that would be it. That doesn't quite exist in XElement. So for this, we're just basically dropping in these little placeholders for time being, right, in between these little span tags, because we, as the authors of this component, know, right, actually, to be honest, I'm going to break this up a wee bit, right, this is all too much. You belong on that line, you end here, you on a new line, right, and you stay there, you close that. Happy days. Right, let's do the same here. Now you're good, you just need to get on a new line. Close that, get rid of that, and then get rid of this curly bracket because that would break things. And this is another little thing that we never need to use again. Fragments.
So instead of in JSX, we would use curly braces in our variable name and say that we can import stuff here. What we've been doing is wrapping just placeholders for now, but we've been wrapping them in actual HTML elements because XElement can target HTML elements versus using the curly brace JSX syntax.
Exactly. I'm just thinking might be good, because what we can do is, like, we can render this onto the DOM, right? Hide it off the side, and when it's needed, we could just fly this in and populate it using the JavaScript. Because
So
the thing is, right?
Yeah, instead of the JSX conditional for showing it, we're going to figure out more like a CSS kind of style for where it is in the viewport or out of the viewport.
Exactly, yes. and then from there, right, we're basically just going to turn around, right, and then start, because what we'll be doing is leveraging CSS for, putting it off the DOM, right, well,
Mhm.
sorry, off the painting flow and out the side, right, and then we're just going to basically try and then use a JavaScript to populate it off the side, right? Because we could go to the expense of creating these nodes, right? I mean, we can do that. There's nothing wrong with this, but if we're going to create these nodes often, then it gets a wee bit expensive on JavaScript. So let's try and minimize it. And this is a method that you can do to try and minimize that expenditure of creating DOM nodes all the time and manipulating them. But yeah, it's just, to be honest, Sarah, it's either or. As I'm saying this out loud, I'm actually just talking myself out of it, really. um, I found myself. It does happen.
Yep.
And so yeah, so we get this right, and I'm just going to format this out here. So this closes, right, and we move this over, and then we get the region divs. And this will be our this will be our placeholders, right? So we'll just basically drop in. This will be filled in by the text content, right? But
Yep.
what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment that out there, right? Right, happy days. Right, and then we've got this regions diff up here, right? This little list thing, right? Put this in as a literal up here, right? So because effectively this is going to get made by XElement, right? And I'm just going to keep this up as a placeholder for time being, if you get what I mean. I want to keep this, but we will all come back to this and we will reframe this in in a way that's more suitable for XElement to take hold of. Because
Yes.
like you've done, right, you've mapped this, and like we've done in our notable form, right, we've done something similar where we created a literal list. So we can do that as well, if you get what I mean.
Yep. Now
Right.
the extra complication with this section that we're doing is
Mm-hmm.
that, as you can see in the code, the list items themselves then have to be clickable buttons that call functions to then search for any
Other things.
subdivisions of location. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is, it's like where we will so this is ideally where I would like to have these as individual X elements, right, but hidden off the side, if you
Yeah.
get what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Because then I could just grab them and I could clone them, or I could grab them and insert them, or
Mhm.
append them, do whatever I wish with them, right? Because so it's like what, but the thing is, we can't import Astro components on the client, right? There's no renderer, remember. We need to try and think of how am I going to take this and try and make this into the basic, using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That is all I've got,
Right.
and that's all I want. But in order for me to have my vanilla ice cream, I need to sacrifice the mint, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. So we're going to have to figure out how to essentially go these levels deep with our calls.
Yes,
Like, yeah.
right? Because this is effectively an X element within an X element. I think I got this. Because then there's just 3 different divs then, right? Got you. So basically what we're going to do, right, is like create the 3 here, right? So the other 3, right, let's just say 1, 2, 3, right? And this will be sub-regions, right? And this will be, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically teeter out this because this inner content is different, right? And I'm just going to go, this is L2 layer, right? And this is only visible once the L1 layer is completed, and we could set this by just turning that on by JavaScript, right?
Mhm.
Right, because then that way all the X elements and all that stuff is already rendered. You get what I mean? So when this call is made and this is visible, what this will then do is then this will then target this and switch this on, right? So this goes from display none to display block, right?
Okay, yep.
And then in there, right, is like we would also then target the inner child, the text content of this from here, right?
Yes.
And then that would then set the next region, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
remember, it's like all the inner text content is just going to get done by JavaScript. All we want to do is basically try and get the X elements onto the DOM and then
Yep.
onto the browser, right? At this point, right? So as we're breaking this out, buttons within buttons,
Hmm.
it's like what happens when that button does click, is like we're going to set that in the do at the top, right? So we'll
Yep.
go, let's right, do my children, get that button, then set an event handler on it. So we're not going to be doing an event handler on this directly. We're just going to be encapsulating that logic within the scope of the element itself.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Okay, so we've kind of got a plan, and we're just going to do something here actually, and yeah. So let's just do this as perfect, right? So boom, 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 boom. Got that. Sublist, right? So this again is, yeah, the same kind of template literal, right? I'm just going to see if we could do, yep, this is pretty much the same template literal that we got up here, right? So we don't need to deduplicate this. And then we've got pretty much this underneath. Yes, yes. And then this bit here is find location code starting. Oh, that's the top level, yes. And then this is where we get into the button here. We're going to need that in a separate bit, right? Because what we're doing is really this regions list here. That's what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
By the looks of things. And then, yeah, find the location code, right? So let me just marry this with the app. Right, okay. Got you. So this is where we are, right? So that's going to be static. This is the form. That's going to
Yep.
set the default location code, right? And what we're going to do is, yep, we're just going to break it down, right? So we're going to go like break out the store a wee bit, right? And set more objects to that, right? And then, yep, that populates this, right? Okay, so first things first, let's do the top level. We could come back to this in a second, right? So X regions, which is this bit here, right? So we're just going to go set regions list, this, copy, paste, bring this all over, back, back, back. You go there, you go there. You collapse. And you move over, you move over. Everything's good. Wrap this in a div. I miss my emit. div. Grab this, move this up. Happy days. Right. And then we find our location code. Use G for locations in Great Britain. Happy days. Let me just fix this styling. Right. Span. Yeah, we can span that and keep that there. Right. And let's just pop this onto the X. Yes, there we go. Right. So we are Xform here. Happy days. Right. Just to make sure that it was all set up. No, we need this. And this is it. Regions down here. X region. See, it's a good thing I put these placeholders in for me, didn't I? There was math. See when you understand like your own shortcomings. And so
Yeah.
right, so
And notice in Gitpod, you're able to do all the things you can do locally, like, replace all instances of.
right, filter resolve because the file pages.
Okay, so where's your X regions?
Oh, right, is there
Oh,
one
you're an
down?
extra sub-level deep. Yeah.
Yep.
No, other way. xBird first, and then X
X
regions.
regions, my mistake, sorry.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that should work.
And we've got live. There we go. And there we go. That's the two things that
Yep.
we've added to the page. Happy days,
Yep.
right? Now we need the form, right? Which is this bit here. And then that populates the display underneath, right? So let's just get the form. And because this has an action, we're going to have to turn this into an XElement, right? So in this project, for the first time, we're just going to be importing I wonder if people make this many typos as I do. Um, and all we're going to do is just go down here and to here, and there you go. It's an XElement, ladies and gentlemen. Right?
Yep.
And like, yep. So we're just going to go. So form on submit. We're just going to turn around and get this, change this into an at, submit, and get countries list, right? So this is our first real function that we're coming into, right? And then get countries list on this side here is up here, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Now we can actually
Still more to that, because that's even just setting up the API call.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
That's
that
the
whole thing.
entire
Yep.
there. That entire
Yep.
whole thing there, right? So what can we get? What can we do with XElement that's slightly different to here? Well, first of all, it's the state. We don't need these 3 lines. We could refactor them somewhat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we get the location query, right? The region, happy days. Okay, so what we're doing, we're going to turn this input into an XElement as well. because we're going to need to capture the values that are coming out of it. Okay. The button, we could put the fetch request on the button, right? So we're breaking this one-way function up into, which elements are doing which, right? On submit, we could basically do a prevent default. And we do a no-op. So a no-op is a no operation where we just basically return this. And you can do that with XElement. So when we hit the submit button on the form, it really does nothing on this side because on submit was this where we get the event and we pass in the event details, but we're going to capture all that out and we're going to put the fetch on the actual button itself. So this button is going to do carry out the actual fetching.
But having that null function on the form like that at least lets us do the prevent default, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So in effect, all we're doing is just telling XElement to prevent the default action on the form. And because the form is not really doing anything, we can do a fetch request and post the data off this form to a backend. And that's where what you would do in here. You would on submit, you would make your fetch request and the API request in here, right? But we're not really doing that. So we're just sticking a no-op in, so that way we could just use the event prevent default behavior and nothing else, right? And get country list is not defined. We know that, my friend. We know that. We're getting there. This is throwing a fit. And we also need to fix this.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is just basically going back to that form and just turning that back into a no-op, right? Awesome. And then we're just back to here, right? So we're going to here. And then all we're doing is just doing an on change, right? And doing, well, we'll figure out what we need. We do need the store, right? We know that. We're going to need the store at some point, right? So we just call the store in. Now here we go store dot location's already taken up. Personally speaking, on this dot value, right? So, and then in here at click, right, we're just going to do the E for event, right? Sorry, EV for event. I don't like E for event, EV, if I'm going to abbreviate it. And then we've got the store. And then we are going to console of this. Store.country. We're off to the country. I'm going to grow a lot of peaches. We're moving to the country. I'm going to eat a lot of peaches. Oh.
Yes. All right.
Happy
yes,
days.
we have country.
Right. We have country. And we got country music as well. Right. So with country, we were just setting the state, right?
Yeah.
And then we were basically doing a fetch request.
Yes.
Right. And then we were just basically getting that data. If we could forget this, we could go with this, get the headers, get the response, and then just console log the data.
Yeah.
Like that, copy and paste, buddy. Copy and paste. Now this is going to scream because we're using a wait here, right? What we need to do is just turn this into an async function.
Okay.
And there we go. You could use, right? And you don't even need to use async if these are promises. You could use the enable method and start chaining your promises together, right? But we are in 2022, so we can use cool next stuff. And we get this. Now, whenever we click this button, we should make a fetch request, right? Query.location is not defined. Excellent. we got a problem. This is our problem here, right? So our query.location was not
Oh,
defined.
yes.
And because we needed to get the store.country, right? So we're going to the store to eat a lot of peaches. Right. So here we go, here we go, here we go. There we go. Excellent. Excellent. Right, okay. So we've got our first bit, right? And all we're basically going to do, right, is close this. Is return that data, right, into this, so that way we can access that data somewhere else, right? So with this data, we're just going to basically go.
Can we put that whole data object, like, can we put that in the store?
In the store? Yes, we can. Exactly what I was thinking, right? So here we could just basically go, yeah, store.country. So what I'm going to do actually, right, is like see here, right, where it says store.country.
Maybe make it country code or something like
this code, yep, equals this dot value, and then
yes.
right, so then this would here would be country.code. I've done this, right, and what I'm going to do is I'm also going to make a field for data, right, and I'm just going to set that to nothing, right, and then that way that could write over this. Yeah, let's just see if this works, because you could you would like do a spread operator thingamajig. Yep, there we go.
Okay.
That there, right? And all we got to do is, yep, and all we're doing is console logging the country.data. That there, right? So that's on the store itself. So if I went to console log store, we're going to should see quite a number of things now, right? Right, so we've got country, we've got code, we've got data, right? Bear in mind, you're probably expecting, it's like, hold on, what happened to location and default location? Because I'm pretty certain we've used that in the code base. You know, we've set that code up, right? So,
Well, we
you
haven't
know,
done anything yet on this
exactly,
page since the refresh. Yeah.
exactly. So if we just go to here, set default location, right? And then we just go to here, we just do this.
Yeah.
It's
Now
there.
it's in. Yeah.
You get what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So that's that. Happy days.
Good.
All right. And good. Right. So we got the country.data, right? And then it's a simple case of using that to then populate everything else, I believe. Right. Because the vast majority of this could be either done directly in JavaScript, or we can try and Astro and JavaScript the two together. Right.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So what I'd do, right, is I'll start nesting the children in here, right? So the next up we got the list, right, the regions list, which is the next step here, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this component is going to be, right? And for there we're just going to basically map the result out, right? Actually,
Now we've sort of nested we've nested the response object we get from the API call in the store object. So we're just going to have to sort of dig a level deeper to get at it. But otherwise, the structure, I think, should be the same.
yes. Yes, because all we're going to do, right, is basically, so it's like there's the store.country, right? So we've got country code. Let's just call this country code. That would get confusing.
Now you've defined it with a capital C for yeah.
Just making sure, right? And
Yeah.
then so that's that, right? And what was because we got the data for that, right? And to be honest, I don't know why I did that, because we're just going to go store dot location, store dot region and all that stuff. So we're just going to, create more placeholders to that. We're not going to add anything to this object. Don't know why I did that. Sorry, let me just remove that again. Because it made it easier with just code. And then here, right, we get the data. We got the data nice and lovely. Just double checking what I got, right?
I'm not sure the API URL got updated to just code.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
That there. That there. And this has been funny.
So store.country.code. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is it because I'm not console logging anything?
Ah, that's what we changed. Okay.
There we go. We've got country, we've got code, we get the data, we get code, England name. Good. Right, so here is right. So in here, we're just going to go import XList into this. Right, and then down here, this will be very interesting if I can do this. Import XElement, yep, we're going to turn this into a div, so we're going to go const div XElement, remove that, forget class name. Right, and then we go do. Right, and we're going to go console log. No, the reason why I'm writing this in here, right, is like not enough in the front matter right now, is because what I like to do is when it comes to creating the logic, inline the logic and then take it out, if you get what I mean. It's yeah, it just makes things so you know exactly where what breaks, what doesn't in terms of syntax, etc. It makes it a bit more tight in that respect. It makes no difference to write the logic in the Astro front matter or if you inline it, but it's just my own form of practice. Const list equals this dot query selector, and then we were gonna get the UL, sorry, right, and then we're gonna go list dot inner HTML equals, yep, and then we're gonna go store dot country dot data dot map. I'm going to take each item, and then we're just going to basically stick that through the literal, right? Which, and we're just going to basically go data in here, and then we're just going to return this, right? And then we're just going to go data dot code, right? What are you crying about now?
The other thing I was going to say, the div that you've written the do method in, does that need to be an XElement div in order
Yes,
to
it does. That's why
do
it's
it?
crying. I'm thinking, why are you crying? Like, you just...
And
Sarah, you keep me on my toes. right?
And did we import a div up top?
We did. Yes. No, we did. Yeah, we did.
We did.
Const
Okay.
div was
So that
element.
should be okay
Yeah,
now.
that should be okay now. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cancel use guys out, right? There you go. Cancelled. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this into the body of this function here. Makes no difference, does it? Not really. And then from here, we're just going to go literal. Item. And we could get rid of this region dot
Yep.
code, because this is just code and name, isn't it? It comes back. Yep. Right, so that's that. And then this on-click button handler, right, is something that we could take out, right? Because, I mean, really speaking, because when you click on them, that changes it, right? So that's the next problem that we're going to sort, right? Just going to
Yes.
get this.
And it's not changing an existing value, it's creating a new one because now there are sublocations.
Exactly, right? And we should be able to gather that, right, using the query selector as well, right?
Yeah.
To then activate that and put the event listener onto that as well, right?
So
So
the
all
other
we really
thing it might not like right now, we have this concept of name, and I don't think we have a name defined anywhere in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, so what was it that I brought back? Sorry, I did forget what it brought back, right? GB. Right, notice how one element's not working, but not everything else on the page does. Right, so yeah, we do get code and we do get name.
Okay.
So we get
So it
two
knows
things
what that
back,
is.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so it would, and then but what it doesn't do is knows what's in these here, right? So, but what we can do is, sorry, why did I do that? Just put these in the, and this is data.name, because instead of region, it should have been data.
Yeah.
Data.name. This is data.code. And this is in inverted commas, like that. Right, and what else? This can, right. We don't need this key, right? And then there we go. But see this data.code, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this data code as a event listener, as a data attribute,
Okay.
right? Because then that way we could grab that. Because if we were going to be setting these states, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? We just want to basically be grabbing the button, it's like the buttons, similar to what the method that we've been doing so far, right? And now, fingers crossed, eh? Store is not defined. Why am I not defining my store? Aye, because it's in here. Right, send. 2 seconds. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this into a list. Let array equals this, and then I'm going to console log this. There's not a native observer for this, maybe? Is there? I don't think. Maybe the actual observe method would do. Because XElement is pure simple, it's like let's take a static site generator and give your elements, interaction ability, right? But what happens if we get to this point where then the reaction happens after the fact? You know, it's like
Yes.
XElement isn't really that reactive on that respects because you know it's like, but there is methods there is ways of doing this. It's just you know how do we get data from one to update the other and then have that constantly fire? Well, we've got you know XElement does have the observers baked into this, right? And we're coming back to the actual @observe method because I think, if I'm right, if I think we could do this, right? Because what I've done, right, is I'm going to go document. Sorry, let me just get the list right. So const query selector, and I'm just going to go that, right? So I've got the list now, and then I'm going to do location list dot dataset dot I don't want to call it dataset dot data, but it kind of is. You know what I mean? Right. So I'm just getting that. Right. And then this will be an @observe. Right. And we are doing we're just going to console log. Actually, to be honest, I'm just going to keep this as I do because that doesn't do anything right now. Right. I could just stay out of the way. Yeah. I don't know why it doesn't like this. Oh yes, because of this. Right. And then if I go to here to observe, we go boom, 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 give me the entry, give me the store. Ah, yeah, that's right. So let's just get rid of that. Might help if I put the location list there. I think we're coming to, you know, there we go. So we've
There.
got
Yeah.
observation, right? So if we go back to here, right, we should be able to see beyond all the is that further up here, right? Is that let me just grab this element here, right? That we have a data object. Sorry. Here, right?
Yeah.
But I think we need to stringify this, right? So let's stringify this.
Yeah.
Because fetch response dot json dot stringify. Stringify, yes, that looks about right. And so if we do this again, no.
Yep. Now we're not console logging that anymore, are we, to get the 4 regions? Have we done that anywhere?
Sorry?
We no longer, so the console is the yeah, we're not getting the data. We're not seeing the response
The
object
physical
here yet.
data? No, not yet,
Yeah, we
no.
took that out.
So what we're
So
doing, we're just
let's,
trying to get that sorted out here, right?
yeah.
So all we're doing is just trying to, I'm just going to get this out here actually, right? And then, and it's await response JSON, right? So if I do this, go here, go to elements, there we go. See that?
Yeah, perfect.
Right. And now that's it serialized there, right? Now
Yeah,
that fired off an observation, right? So that is, so it's like XElement noticed an observation on that element saying, right, okay, the data has changed.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So it's like, and then so the data has changed, right? So what we're going to do is like we're going to go in and we're going to try and get the actual values, right? So we go to the data values, right? So the data set here, and then we go dataset.data, right?
Yeah.
This makes it really hard to do your work with, by the way, especially when you like try to get,
Yeah, and it keeps refreshing.
exactly. So yeah, so we got the where's my values there? Dataset, right? Dataset.data, and then we
Yep.
basically take that and then re-JSON, JSON parse that, right? Um, Now we get that, but we can do more with this observation now, right? Um, with this observation, we can actually do a lot of the templating work inside, if you get what I mean, right?
So you want to do more with the observation, and then because there's two things. We haven't printed to the screen, and then I
Mm-hmm.
can see that there's one place that we've just got text holder
Mm-hmm.
that we could at this point we could probably no, if you go back to the HTML render itself,
Right,
uh,
yes.
yeah, right underneath. See regions in $ location
Mm-hmm.
in the header. Like that we could now we're at a point we could probably get those updated relatively
Exactly.
easily. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So within this observer, right? So now we've got something that fires when something changes. So it's
Yep.
semi-reactive. So we kind of hit that point with
Mm,
XElement. It's
yeah.
like how the how the Dutch do we make this thing reactive, right? Reactive, let me just explain in this respects, right, is what's happening on the right hand side, right? Um, we've got a list element, we've got data coming into it. So in React, right, as soon as the data comes in, React would happily just go about, making up a bunch of list elements, mapping over this and putting the data button into it.
Yeah.
And then it also serializes this wee bit into here as well. So you have JavaScript within a JavaScript within JavaScript kind of thing, right? Nicely nested layers. And that's where, React comes into it. That is reactivity, right? That is something that XElement doesn't really give you out the box, but it gives you all the tools to do, if you get what I mean.
Hmm.
Reactivity requires a renderer, right? Especially a client-side renderer. XElement doesn't come with a client-side renderer, ergo, you don't get that. Right, so we got this, right? So we're going to basically update the location here, right? And that location is going to basically come from what we set in here, right? So when they click the button, we set the location, data set location, and then we got store. Why did I change this? There we go. And then we move this.
Yeah.
Await into here. Right, happy days. Store.country.data is what I'm needing, right? Store.country.data. Not a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to grab this ID. So this is no, you can't do that. So what we're going to do is basically just remove this, call that in capital R, remove it into Pascal case, right? Because then we could call it like that. And then we're going to do text content,
Yeah.
right? Is equal to store dot locate country dot data. No, dot name, right? It's code.gb, right? So it's not name, it's code. That's the problem.
Oh,
There
you
go.
got it. Okay.
Right, so AU, AU, and we've got all the
Yep.
birds in Queensland, Australia.
Yep.
Right, there you go. Right, and all we need to do is just like pop in the regions, the span, and this bit here, right? And we're just going to go to text content, and yeah. And then we can turn around and just remove this, right? And so refresh this, see that gone, click this, GB, we get regions in GB.
Perfect. That's what we want.
Woo!
Yep. All
Party
right.
up in here, party up in here. Right?
All right. And I
So,
think the last thing I'm going to make you do while we're on this track is so we're probably not going to get all the layers deep today, but let's also render
the
render
list.
the regions. Yeah.
Yes, let's render this list out now,
Even
right?
just a list of the, if it's GB, then we're going to render Wales, Northern Ireland, England, and what's the other place? Scotland.
What do you mean, what's the other place? Here, Missy, I have you know that you get stabbed for that. You get chinned.
So let's make it
Oh,
do that. Let's make
yep.
it do that because we
Right,
can see
okay.
the call is being made. We just need to list out that data now.
Perfect, right. And, ooh, Petra had a weird problem, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to console log this for a second, right?
Okay.
Because let's just take a look at something funky. Where's my console? There we go. Why is my console not coming up, man? Here, pal. There we go. See my console log?
Yep.
This, right?
Yep.
Brought up the element.
Yep.
That is in an actual uh, DOM mutation observer. Again, this would normally reference back to the actual global scope, whereas it actually references the actual element that it's observing, right?
Right.
This becomes a lot more powerful in XElement. It does what you want it to do, right? So in here we go this dot, and we got rid of our literal, didn't we? So yeah, inside here, this is where we're going to be doing the entire literal generation, right? So let me see if I've still got that in my thingamajiggy. Here we go. Yes, right. Now let's copy this out, get this out, and then we just do this. X, right? This can close over. Right, so what we got here is the list, and we're just basically console logging the we're doing a query selector, right, for any children components that might have a list, and we've only got one. So we're pretty safe with this query selector, right? Then we've got a wee template literal that we're just going to basically be populating, right? And then we're just going to be mapping over the top of it, right? Now, what we can do, right? Really, we don't need the data from the store because we're serializing the data into the attribute, right? The store just kind of made life easy a wee bit, right? So ideally, I want to get out of the store and I want to just use the data that's serialized into the attribute, okay? Because we went to all that hassle. You get what I mean? There needs to be some sort of observable change. The observer itself, right? I think I should actually bring this up in the XElement docs. There's a page here in the API section that talks about the observe property, right? And Normally, it would observe the top 3 attributes by default. So any changes made to the subtree or the child's list, what do you call it? So if there was any children added to the element, it would notice it, and then it would fire off that on that observation. So by default, it fires off on 3 observations. Any changes made to the attributes, which we've done. So right now, it's only observing on this change to the attributes, or any change to the subtree or the child's list. There is other additional ways for you to control the DOM mutation observer, right? As you can see, this refers to the XElement itself, right? And then from there, you could even fire this once as well. So that way it fires once and then disconnects. But we want this to continuously fire, so we're just going to continuously just use the observe as itself, right? But yeah, that is the observe method. And then so what we're doing, just noticing it on the, because the thing is, there's actually 3, right, observations happening, if you noticed, right? Sorry, let me just reiterate this. The attributes, the subtree, and the child's list, right? We're just really wanting to capture the attributes. We don't really want any of the other 2 or any more observations that we need, right? We can narrow this down a wee bit. And to do that, we pass in the third option, literally option, right? And to be honest, you could call this anything you want. You could even go O, right? And then you could go O equals, right? Attributes. And this is just attributes equals colon true or false. And we just go true. And what this does is overwrites every other, the defaults, and just,
Okay. So even though it's
right?
true by default, by specifying true, you are therefore saying everything else should be false.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we don't have
Right.
to come in and just pick those other 2 that are true by default and set them to false. We can just set this one true.
Yes, this just overrides all the
Okay.
existing default, right? And then just overrides it and then goes, right, okay, it's only the attributes. Or,
Okay.
it's like you could set more than 1 here, by the way. You could set all 7 if you wanted to, but we're only focusing on the 1, right?
Yeah.
And this just sits there. This doesn't come anywhere inside the code in here, right? That gets picked up by XElement itself on the outside, okay? Just to make that point. And then, so we get the regions return list, we get this, right? So we get the attributes, and all I'm doing is going back into, right, so we got that, we get
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Happy days, life is good, right? Nothing's
And when
broken,
when we do that, the element itself has changed and now has more attributes.
exactly. So let's take a
Yeah.
look at this,
And
right?
we want to
So we
target
can go
those.
to
Yeah.
here, right? And this is what, and so yes, so here, right? Sorry. Here, the parent div, not the title, but the parent div has all the data in it, right?
Okay.
Serialized, right?
Yeah.
And that is what we're going to basically be using,
Okay.
right? Now, with the parent div's data serialized, right, we can then do like, for instance, this dot data set dot data greater than, sorry, aye, just make this conditional, right? So that way there's something there, right? Then we are going to go this dot data set dot data. Why is this breaking? Oh yeah, this is causing me right now. Data dot map, and we take in the items and we're just sticking that through the literal item, right? And then
Now, do you have to set the length of this dot data set dot data greater than 0? Is that
yes.
okay?
Good shout. Sorry, my head was up my ass for a second. Right, so there's also one last thing. So we're just going to basically grab the UL list, right? We're not getting the list, right? And then we're just going to list.text content, list.inner insert adjacent for end, I think it is, and we're just going to go, sheet. Yeah, and then this is where we're going to put this. I think this is the problem is with this line here, right? So insert adjacent, there's going to be some data, right? So we're going to just basically go this dot data select dot data dot map, right? Item, we're just going to console log each item, can we? No, forget that. We need to just print the item, right? And then we're just going to go literal item. Aye, so this would go. Right, and then I'm going to console log this dot the data here. Happy days.
Okay, so we do have an array of 4 objects, okay?
Right.
And then each of those has a code and a name. Okay.
Yep. Right, so we got that, right? Now we've got the data, so we could parse the data. So we go, so we can map the data, into the literals,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Dot map. There we go. Right. So we got our stuff going on. Line breaks, because it's been right. Okay. So, anyways, right, and then we get that. And now it's a simple case of just doing list dot inner HTML. Shall we just go with the inner HTML for the time being?
Sure, let's try that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Data. Right. And then we just close this. Right. This. Ladies and gentlemen.
There's all my provinces.
Yay!
Excellent. All right. Next, and next time, and we figure out how to nest XElements in each other to get those buttons to be clickable.
Oh, that I have a good idea. Because
Oh,
from
yeah?
here on in, right, it's like, yeah, then we can just target these buttons and then just add event listeners within inside the observer handler. It's like, it's pure on JavaScript there on in, right? This is that we can do. I'm more confident about this next part than I was before. I must admit, I was sweating a wee bit, I was like thinking, just like, crap, how am I going to get this React? How am I going to do this next bit? But I'm glad we managed to break that. And I'm glad that, it was like when the observer implementation, I've always felt to be one of the more powerful out of the lot, in terms of like what XElement gives you. Just finding use cases for it is very difficult. You get what I mean? It's like, not unless you come across something, then the use case, and it's one of those use cases like you really need to think about and search about. But I just want to stress that it is very powerful. The basket of tricks that XElement gives you, as you can see, this is the thing that's the changes on the any mutations that you make to the DOM. This is how you're going to do it, and this is how you will react to it. But I'm glad that's all it took. I mean, really, this is a very simple, method.
Yeah, so in the React app, what we did was we
Mhm.
called the API, and then the data that was returned, we had a whole whack of state going on, and we
Yeah.
returned that list of buttons there. Each of them, each line item was further interactive and was going to call. Now it needs to call a different API. We just haven't done that yet. But
Yep.
here with XElement, what we're doing is we're using the observe method. We are in that data we're getting, we're actually putting as attributes right on that divs HTML element in the DOM.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're taking the data from there. We're taking, because
Exactly.
that's the information that changed on the element. The observe method is watching for that, and it's pulling that data to use to create our buttons now.
And this is the thing, right? Because we've got like the data has been serialized to the actual HTML, right? We could reference this data from elsewhere. You get what I mean? It's like
Yes.
we're serializing the state in effect, right? A huge mammoth of information that you normally put into a set state into React, but we're putting that directly onto the actual HTML element, right? Should this page not refresh every 30 seconds, like if it's some sort of jittery ADHD fool, right? We would that would persist for the period of the page being there, until it's overwritten by something else, right? And so it's like it's just another level of page persistence in effect. I am really happy, Sarah, with what we've managed to accomplish today, right? Shall I do a wee summary?